Hi, I'm Joe from Square Innovations with another Night Power Sports product. This is the Brute Force Prairie Sure 4 with tank lever. Inside the box, you'll get some paperwork, the tank lever, 4-wheel drive and diff lock shifter, and of course, the Sure 4 manual actuator. Okay, so now we're going to start the installation process. First step is going to be taking some things off of your ATV. First, we can pop the seat off. That comes off with this lever here. Put that off to the side. Now we come over here. We're going to take the front rack off, remove the 4 screws that hold this on. And take the rack off. Remove these uprights that were underneath the rack. Next, we're going to remove this panel, unscrew this front screw here, and then there's one here and another one back here on the other side of the gauges. As you're removing this, your 12-volt outlet will be connected, so unplug this as you take this off, set this off to the side. Next, we'll remove the side holders. There are a bunch of screws that hold this in. Remove all of the screws that are holding this panel on. On this side, you will also have to remove the nut on your key. And on this side, you will have to open up the storage compartment, and there are a few screws inside here that you'll have to remove in order to get this panel to come off. Remove these two. Set them off to the side. Next, we are going to remove the screws that hold the footwell to the front fender and the side fender. So all of the screws here that hold it on to the front fender, along with these screws that hold the side fender to the front fender, along with back here, this one screw and this one screw, and it's identical on the other side also. Remove all of those pieces, and then take this off. Oh, you do need to remove your shift knob in order to get the side fender to come out. This just unscrews. Pop this side fender off. And again, that's identical on the other side. Pop this side fender off. Now, underneath on some, you will have a fender like this. This is mounted. This is mounted on the inside here. When you removed the 2 screws that held the 2 fenders together, you will have removed them from here, and then it's held on with push fasteners up here, over here, and one down there. Remove those push fasteners and take this fender off, and this is on both sides. You'll have to do that. Okay. Once all of that is removed, we need to undo the headlight. One more step down here. There's a screw that holds the headlight in right here. Then you'll need to follow the wire from your headlight and disconnect it. Pop this connector out like that. And then there is a clip. Let me show you this clip. There's a clip like this that is in between your headlight and your front bumper right here. So you're going to need something like a long screwdriver is what I used to get in there, get behind this clip, and pry it out. Pop this clip off, and that'll be everything so that your headlight is no longer connected. So now everything is disconnected, and we can remove the entire front fender here, right? So this one has a horn installed from our control switches box. That's what's getting snagged right there. Oh, I didn't disconnect the horn. Go. This headlight was still plugged in. Okay. All right, there we go. Now this fender's off. So now we have access to pretty much everything we need. So now we're ready to install the tank lever. The first step is going to be to route the cables down the front steering column here. Going to take these and go through these parts here. This. I'm going to thread these down, and you want to keep track. The cable with the O-ring installed on it is the one that's going to go to your four-wheel drive actuator. The cable without is the one that's going to go to your diff lock. So you want the one with the O-ring to stay on that side of your steering column so that it sweeps down and over to this side. And the opposite with this one, you want to come on this side of the steering column and then sweep over to the opposite side of the differential. So I'm going to go on this side of the quad just so I can reach in there. Might be hard to see. I'm getting the cables routed so that they are smooth and there's no kinks anywhere. The diff cable I'm actually going to route over the other side of the coolant line now, just because that looks like a smoother path. Okay, those are pretty close, so now I'm going to come back up and I'm going to take this wire. This will get routed through here and plugged in. Right now we're going to put the tank lever on the handlebars and screw it back into the throttle housing. Okay. Now this wire can route through just like we did everything else. This 2-pin connector gets plugged in where we unplugged the four-wheel drive rocker switch from earlier. So we're going to come down here and just plug this in right here, just like that. This will get routed down and plug in to where we unplug the four-wheel drive actuator from. We're going to slide this down through the hole that the steering column goes through. Let's see that over here. That's where I'm pushing the cables and wiring through. And we'll find where the four-wheel drive actuator is plugged in, unplug it, and plug this in. So we're almost ready to run the cable and install the Sure 4 now, but diff oil is going to leak out from where the actuator is on the differential. So the first thing we're going to do is drain the front differential oil. So I just put the drain plug back in. We're going to have to take the tire off. So first I'm going to lift it up. Okay, now we can take this wheel off. Don't lose those washers. Now we're ready to install the Sure 4 manual actuator. First, we'll remove the electronic actuator. It's held on with these three 8mm screws. So actually, this bracket also has to be removed, which will be an additional two 8mm screws. Okay, now the actuator will come out just like that. And we're going to follow the wiring up and find where it goes over to here. It's plugged in. Lift up on that tab, just like the other connectors. Lift up on this tab and pull this out. Remove this wiring. Okay, four-wheel drive actuator, electronic one, is removed. So now we can install the manual actuator. This is the latest design, which allows you to screw in the cable into this part here. Also has this slotted design, which will help with some other things, and a raised part here to get a better seal with the O-ring. So can remove the one nut on the cable, and then you're going to screw the actuator onto the cable. Get it all the way on so that at least some threads are coming out, just like that, and then later we can tighten that nut against it with that O-ring to seal it. This O-ring was on the electronic actuator. We're going to put the new one on that came with the kit. Located in the parts bag with the lid. This O-ring here. Make sure the surface is clean. Put the O-ring on the actuator. So the collar should be facing down, which would be in this direction. You see it rotates. Keep it in this downward direction as you're installing this. The sleeve inside here towards the front is 2-wheel drive. If you push your finger in there and push it to the back, that's 4-wheel drive. So you want it kind of towards the front, maybe even a little centered right now as you install this. So you're going to bring the actuator in, get that collar to go into the gear in there. And then it doesn't really want to sit in, it has to get dropped in on an angle. So you're going to tilt the short 4 down so that the lower bolt hole is touching the differential. Then wiggle it around a little bit of pushing in as you're moving it, and you'll get it to sit in, pop in just like that. So now you can take the 3 screws that came with the kit and mount the actuator to the differential. Okay. Now we have the actuator installed. We're going to make the adjustments. Pull this sleeve off of the adjuster. That. Shifting to 2-wheel drive, we'll get more slack out of the cable. And now we can start to make the adjustment here. Since there's too much slack here when I'm in 2-wheel drive, going to unscrew this adjuster. Make sure that the lever is all the way in the 2-wheel drive position. And you'll get this to start to get tight. The best way to adjust it is to shift into 4-wheel drive. If you start to go to 4-wheel drive and it won't go all the way in, that's because the gears in the differential aren't lined up. Just rotate your wheels a little bit. I just rotated the hub by hand just a little bit, and that got the gears to line up, and it slid into 4-wheel drive. So this is all the way in 4-wheel drive. I know that because I can't move it any further. You actually want just a little bit of slack there. So I'm going to screw this adjuster down just a little bit so that there's just that little bit of play in 4-wheel drive. That's too much. That's perfect. So that's 4-wheel drive. Back to 2-wheel drive. You see it goes all the way to the 2-wheel drive position. Back to 4-wheel drive. It's locked in there. So that's perfect. I'm going to pull this rubber cover back down over top of the adjuster. I need to get in there with 2 hands. Okay. Move this. Get that rubber adjuster over there, like that. Now the lock nut can go up. You're going to tighten, get 2 wrenches and tighten the lock nut against the adjuster. And then the same here. I'm going to tighten this lock nut against the housing. And then I'm going to put some cable ties around the cable so that it holds it nice against the frame and in these positions that it's in right now. And then we'll test it one more time to make sure that nothing has moved after we finished buttoning up the install there. Now we can connect the orange wire that comes from the tank lever. This gets plugged into where the electronic actuator was plugged into. Just pop this in here like that, put that in, and as you can see, this wiring is really jammed up in there. There wasn't much slack, so what I did was I pulled this push rivet out from up here and slid the orange wire around that piece of plastic over to this side here. So now there is plenty of slack. It was a little tight the other way. You don't want any of your wires to be too tight. You can just move that over to there instead of running it down the steering column to give yourself plenty of slack. Next, we're going to remove the diff lock. This is the OEM diff lock cable. So I'm going to unscrew this. This part down. Now we need to get the cable come out of the slot down here. So we may need to make an adjustment at the top of the cable near the yellow lever so that there's more slack in the cable. Right here. Going to loosen that up and then screw this in. And this is going to give me more slack and help it make it easier to remove down there. Okay, that should be good. So you can see the diff lock cable here. I routed it on the opposite side of the steering column. Just make sure there's no sharp kinks in it. Nice sweeping bends. Take this and install it the same way you just removed the other cable. Get the ball in the hole here. It's very difficult for me because I'm trying not to block the camera. It is tight, but pop it in just like that. Then just like that. Then lower this nut off. Make sure that your tank lever is not in the diff lock position. Just rotate it so that it's unlocked. That'll give you all of the slack that you need in the cable. So I'm rotating it right now out of the diff lock position. You see all the extra slack I got there. Slide the cable through that slot in the diff. That. Okay. Then take this nut, put it back on. That. And then tighten this nut down on top. Not a lot of room to work with here, but we'll go. Just be patient. Okay, now that's tight. Don't over tighten it. So next thing we're going to do is I'm going to shift the tank lever into diff lock. And you'll see pulls up a little bit. Make sure the lock lever is all the way over and locked. And now what you want to do to adjust this is make sure that you get this as far as it'll go, but not too tight. So I'm going to start to loosen this adjuster, unscrewing it. We'll take the slack out of the cable. See, there's a little bit further, a little further it can go. And now I'm pushing on it. It's really not moving at all. So that's all the way. You don't want it to be too tight, otherwise you'll never get the knob locked into position. You want there to be just that little bit like that. So now I can unlock, diff lock, and then rotate the knob and lock it in. And that's perfect. So I'm going to take the adjuster nut. You might not be able to see it, but it's the same as on the four-wheel drive cable. I'm taking the lock nut against the adjuster. I'm going to use a wrench to tighten that down and pull the rubber cover back over top of the adjuster. And once that's secured and tightened down, that's it. Diff lock is installed and done. So now I'm going to remove the yellow diff lock lever. This is our control switches box, so it might look different than your ATV. If you have a handguard, this is going to be the first step. Remove this nut here, and then on the bottom is a large Phillips head screw you need to remove. Once those two are removed, you can see the screw that is holding in your diff lock lever. We'll remove that next. Okay, you have a washer and the spacer there if you want to save that. Don't lose those. Next, you need to remove this screw that holds on this little plate that holds the cable in place. So now we can pull the cable out, slide it over, and this whole thing comes out. This will separate now. Then snip this zip tie and pull this cable all the way out. I actually think it's easier to go down with it because of the larger end on the other side of the cable. So just kind of feeding it down, pushing it through everything. Just like that. Now that's done. And we can go ahead and put the guard back on. So now we have everything installed, but before you go and put it back together, just do a double check. So this is in diff lock right here. Make sure that when you turn your handlebars lock to lock, nothing is pulling. The cables are good where you secured them. Rotate it, lock it into four-wheel drive. So that's not going right now, and that is simply because you need to rotate the wheels a little bit to get the gears to line up. See that? Just move the wheels a little bit, and that got the lever to go into the four-wheel drive position. Pulled it out a little bit there, and it's locked in. Make sure that you can still turn the bars. Everything is locked in four-wheel drive right now. Unlock it, back in two-wheel drive. Not going. Lock it into four-wheel drive. Just do that double check before we start to put it back together. Putting the plastics on is just the reverse of what you did when you took them off. So first we're going to put this panel on. I have the horn on this, so I got to spread it a little bit. Goes behind the fender like this on both sides. Okay, you can line up these holes where your rack goes in order to make sure that everything's lined up properly. Make sure you put your key through here. It'll get more difficult to get to this as you put more plastics on. Okay. Now everything looks lined up. So now we can put the side panels on next. So this one goes behind the footwell. There. Over here goes over your shifter and under your airbox. Okay. Okay. And then the side panel on the other side. Same thing. Next, we're going to install these screws between these two fenders. One goes here, and the same on the other side. Now, we can install these plastics here. This one has the key, so be careful not to push it out. Get that. There we go. Keep that notch lined up. Like that. And screw this cover on, this part on top of the switch. On the other side, the other plastic, we'll put this on now. And then we can install all the screws that hold both of these on all around, and don't forget the few inside this plastic. So put those in now. So you can get all the screws in on these black plastics up here, and you can start to put the screws in on the fenders, but don't put these two screws in yet between these two fenders, because those screws also hold this mudguard on. This goes back under here, and same on the other side with the other mudguard. This will go in this position right here. The two screws that go through the fender will hold it on there, and then the push rivets that you pulled out before will hold one spot in the bottom and two on top. Next, we can finish up under here. This connector goes to the horn that's connected to the smart control housing switch. The wire here from your headlight, I'm going to go over this bar, connect this back to where it was plugged in before. Has this little part here to secure the wire so it doesn't move around a lot. Then you have the clip and the screw. The clip goes on right here, just like that, and the screw goes in right here to the headlight. Do the same thing on the other side. Next, we'll install this panel. Be sure to reconnect your 12-volt outlet. Slide this over, and then install these 3 screws here, here, and here. Now we can put this on. You install this with 4 screws, front, 2 up here, and on the sides here. Screw that back in. We can put the shift knob on. This just screws in. Screw that all the way down. Like that. Now we can put the front rack on. The taller uprights go towards the front, the shorter ones towards the back. The longer screw will be used on the front and the shorter one on the back. Now we can put the wheels back on. Same on the other side. So now I can drop it down off of the jack, and then I'm going to torque the front lug nuts, put the seat on, and we'll be done. So now everything is back together. Gonna test this out one more time. See that when I rotate the knob from 2-wheel drive to 4-wheel drive, Display shows 4-wheel drive there. Unlock it, shows 2-wheel drive. And then the diff lock knob, when I rotate that, locked in there. See the diff lock light. Out of diff lock. Take it for a ride. Test it out in some mud.